And hello, and welcome to the Global Maritime Supply Chain Week here at FreightWaves. We're so pleased to have you as part of our global ocean and marine transportation component of the FreightWaves Global Supply Chain Week. I'll be your host of today's episode. My name is Steve Ferreira, and I'm CEO of Audit, a global ocean freight refund consultancy company in Hartford, Connecticut. Also the proud author of 2 upcoming books, Quitless, The Power of Persistence, and Navigating B2B, kind of a playoff of my Great Friday show on FreightWaves, which you can see me on Navigate B2B every Friday, 9:30 to 10 a.m. I'm really excited about today's show. You know, in the news lately, there's just been, I think actually somebody said over 3,000 containers have been lost at sea on missed stows in the crazy container-getting world that we live in today. Now, cargo overboard is not the only reason why cargo claims exist. However, in today's episode, the drama of cargo claims in the post-pandemic environment for global shippers really needs to be accentuated and focused on. If you've ever wondered why in this era of global e-commerce and one-click solutions, why cargo claims still remain a nightmare for beneficial cargo owners worldwide, you've come to the right session, because this session is all about the billions, that's right, billions, absorbed by cargo interests for damaged goods in transit and cargo claims. And my guest today is going to take us through a perfect voyage, you see what I did there, on how to take action to defend and protect yourself from these claims. And this person is one of the smartest people I know in the world, and I'm so pleased to welcome to the virtual stage Lina and Jasutiene from Recoupex, and Lina comes to us all the way from Geneva, Switzerland. Lina, welcome to the global stage.
Thank you so much, Steve. I am pleased to be with you at the show, and I am pleased to serve your audience with tips, tricks, and insights how they can protect themselves from the cargo damage.
Well, no one knows this better than you, and as CEO and founder of Recoupex in Europe, of course, our European friends are very familiar with you, Lina. For my global audience, I know that you've served as the counsel or general counsel or maritime attorney for one of the larger container shipping companies in the world for a number of years. You're a PhD. You're an attorney, and I think that we used to have a commercial here in the United States, with a stock brokerage firm. When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Well, I think this should be when Lina talks, people listen. How's that sound?
Perfect. Very good. Let's move forward.
Well, let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about. I think that you and I are, I think, kind of in some ways interrelated in our work. Obviously, I don't do cargo claims in my ocean audit work. I do refunds and recoveries when clients get overbilled. But in the same genre, you fulfill a very strong niche, and that niche is really filled with. Forgive me for saying it like this. I think that you've brought so much professionalism into this niche on cargo claims. But I always thought of it as kind of like a world filled with, I don't know, snake oil sales, or, kind of like just not really, it's like you buy this protection, or you might think you're okay, and then somebody tells you there's nothing they can do. And that's, I think, your introduction, or my introduction to the session, really speaks well in terms of the billions lost. But let me ask you directly, because you are the number one expert here. Why have cargo claims gotten such a bad name in the industry?
Thank you so much, Steve, for kicking off this session with such a great question. It is a paradoxical question, which you actually ask, because 90% of everything we see was likely shipped by sea. And yet, almost anyone who has ever suffered cargo damage in transit and tried to obtain compensation from the liable carrier themselves can confirm this is a nightmare. And my personal answer is just because there are so many parties involved, and oftentimes the blame for the damage is put on the weakest party in the transaction, which is Vcos. And of course, there are a lot of old and new misconceptions around the cargo claims, which is not true, but still some shippers deeply believe, such as if I claim cargo damages from the shipping lines, they might blacklist me. Or this shipping line never pays, that's why I don't even bother claiming. Or cargo insurance is the solution for cargo damage, right? So this is a combination of cause why cargo claims have gotten such a bad name among the shippers globally.
And Lina, do you feel? I had a conversation with a major importer-exporter in the last 4 or 5 hours today, and I was just talking with their offices in Europe and in Southeast Asia, and we were talking about points of responsibility, within the cargo industry in terms of, let's say, what I do is refunds and checking on reconciliation of being overbilled. But do you find when it comes to cargo claims in general, now thinking about it from a BCO perspective, is there one typical person that might be written in their job description, manage cargo claims? And is that person typically in logistics? Could you comment on that?
Well, to start with, I have to go back to my experience with a shipping line, where the most difficult part was to see how many shippers, exporters and importers globally don't know how to defend themselves when cargo is damaged in transit.
No, I know that, but let's talk about the point of control. I mean, do you tend to find that maybe one of the reasons why that is deflected is that it's written into a logistics manager's description and he or she just doesn't know what to do with it? I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
It's also the reason that cargo claims are being handled by so many parties. And when it goes very, very bad, it goes to CEO, right? So there is rarely at the importer's team somebody responsible for the cargo claims. Very rarely. Even today, even with the very big freight forwarders, we can rarely see somebody designated to solve cargo claims, to submit claims, to pursue them successfully. So sometimes it is import manager, sometimes it's logistic manager, sometimes CEO, sometimes even a human resource, we noticed. So a little bit of everyone. And when everybody does this, so means there is a lack of quality and a lack of outcome.
And what would you, if you had your druthers, if you were writing the book on this, which I hope you will someday, which team member do you feel is best suited to deal with cargo claims within an organization?
It is an import manager. Import manager or somebody designated from the import team.
And why do you say that?
Because they already control import cargo. So they have necessary information, they have track and trace, they know when the vessel arrives, and this would allow them to step up in the claim process early on.
And do you feel that in the, well, I'll skip that question now because I really want to start talking about the COVID area, but let's continue on that theme of what we just talked about on while cargo claims have gotten a bad name. And I totally agree with you. I mean, I have seen, you would think, right, in somebody that does what, you do and I do, right, that it's cookie cutter, right, that I can go to the logistics manager and the controller and I can solve everyone's problem. But everything is so customized because each organization, as you succinctly said, solves this issue so differently, even to the point of human resources, right? Or what might a procurement guy be doing getting involved in cargo claims? So it's really, I think the issue is that you just don't know who to go to because each organization just tags somebody. Any more comment on that?
Totally. And if we speak about freight forwarders side, so it's always somewhere. And they prefer to be very nice to the shippers when it comes to sell freight. But when it comes to cargo claims, majority of the freight forwarders, they prefer just to vanish. or to suggest shipper not to pursue claims. If we speak about BCOs, so it's again, any and nobody. So as long there is designated person in the organization to pursue cargo claims, to submit cargo claims, it is very vague, and that's where the losses also start to occur.
I kind of feel that, one area that might up the game a little bit, right, with regards to cargo claims, and I'm not sure if it really fits appropriately, but I kind of like the idea of moving it or slotting it over to perhaps in the customs compliance end at a BCO, right? What's your take on that?
Totally, I totally agree with you, Steve. And to start with, organizations have to look at the cargo claims as integral part of customer service, of customer experience, right? It's not enough to sell freight. It's not enough to ship goods. The question is, what do you do when the bad things happen? That's where exactly you leave memorable, long-lasting impression to your end clients. And as long as BCOs start to avoid this question or looking at the cargo claims handling as an expenses, we will not go anywhere from here. And we have tremendous examples to see where solving cargo claims proactively lead into long-lasting business relationships.
Oh, listen, you're speaking to the choir here. I did a study a few years ago, and I update it every now and then, and I believe that just with, for example, ocean freight overcharges, that BCOs and freight forwarders have lost, $5 to $7 billion a year, right? And I would say that, your estimate on losing billions, whether it's, in 1 year or 2 years or just over a duration, let's put it this way: cargo claims is definitely, a $1 billion, issue. I think, Lina, if my humble opinion, I'd like to get your thoughts on it. I think the issue is similar between what I do and you do, because I think that up until now, until people really knew about us and, we're active on social media and we're getting the message out to our beautiful clients. But I think clients didn't have a good measure and display, right, of, for example, well, how much they overspent and what were the root cause of it, and how are we going to remedy it, and if we remedy it, which vendors or which situations typically caused it. Do you find the same exists in cargo claims where they just don't really track that stuff?
It's such a negative experience. So majority of BCOs just don't want to think about it, because it's like, sometimes I call it like veneric disease, where people attract and everybody is afraid or ashamed of speaking about this. And but at the end of the year, when it comes to calculate losses, there is this sudden shock. How come so much? How come such a big claim? Why did not we do anything? So then it's running after the time.
It makes a lot of sense, and while we're on the topic of those losses and helping the beneficial cargo owners and maybe freight forwarders to quantify the type of money they're losing. What are some of the big areas where they do end up losing a lot of money? Are there any general areas that you could point the audience to that are just really, profit drainers? Any specific kind of genres?
Right. So basically, there are three main areas where BCOs lose a lot of money. So first area, lack of loss prevention at the loading. And here we speak about proper cargo packing, stuffing, lashing inside container. It is not enough just to take watermelons and throw inside a reefer container, expecting that you do your job part well. And here it comes to lack of education or unwillingness to upskill teams, to explain them, okay, what are the good practices to load this type of cargo in the container safely? How can we open vents? How this specific way of packing or stuffing can protect cargo in transit. right? The second area is inefficient evidence gathering practices at the discharge. So when a receiver receives damaged cargo, they don't usually collect sufficient photographic evidence, they don't take pictures, there is no link between the actual damage and the cause of the damage. And after many months, we try to claim losses. So of course, it does not work this way. There are a lot of free tools on social media, and Recoupex, we give a lot of insights and tips how BCOs can, free of charge, uplift their game and protect themselves by gathering evidence in a better way. And the third area, which is the biggest out of all three, is its lack of follow-up. When BCOs submit claim to the shipping line, they submit and forget. Sometimes they send random reminders, nasty reminder, 11 reminder, but it ends up there. You have to bear in mind that every cargo claim pushed into time bar by the shipping lines is a money saved for them. That's why 90% of all claims submitted to the shipping line becomes time barred every year. So you can imagine extent of losses BCOs suffer just because there is no proper, meaningful follow-up process in the place. And money isn't a follow-up. Looking back at my experience with a shipping line, we never paid a claim at the first notification or at the second notification. So here BCOs have to understand that money is in the follow-up.
Totally understood. And Lina, as we start to navigate into our closing parts of our session today, one of the things I wanted to ask you is if you had to, like for example, if somebody said to me, Steve, you do ocean freight refunds, who is your biggest ally? Who is your biggest supporter, potentially within a BCO? And I think I'd have to answer the question in the way that, well, probably the logistics manager that just knows how wild invoicing is and just how surreal it is, and they just can't keep up with it. Let me ask you the question. I think this will really help our audience. So from your perspective, who would be the biggest ally you would have within an organization that could help promulgate some of these issues?
Number one, it's CFO. They understand, yes, it's always like this, because they understand firsthand how much organization lose due to unrecovered cargo claims. Regardless of cargo was insured or not insured, if damage is not recovered, BCOs still lose money. So number one, CFO. And if this session we have listeners, CFOs, I strongly encourage them to take action to look in how do their supply chains look like.
That's excellent. Lina, we have a few minutes left. I wanted to ask you before we and I'd love to have you back on my Navigate B2B show to expand on this, but one question I have real quick is, let's talk about post-COVID. Do you see this as the Wild West of cargo claims, or do you see it as the Wild Worst of cargo claims? Meaning that, are there plentiful opportunities now to make some recoveries in this genre, or should BCOs be looking at this when they normalize?
It's not Wild West anymore when somebody with the strongest gun win. What we noticed during COVID and now as we're moving into post-COVID era is that BCOs understand the value and the losses they suffered due to unrecovered losses from the cargo claims. And they are much more proactive by gathering evidence, submitting documents to the shipping line and claiming their losses back. We also notice surge of different claims being put forward by the BCOs, such as demurrage and detention claims. They claim maintenance and repair invoices back from the shipping lines. Freight forwarders started aggressively claiming abandoned cargo losses from the shipping lines as well. So this is a new trend, but the one who will stay in the market for the years to come.
Wow. Well, it just sounds like that there's, it is in some ways when I say the Wild West, I mean the fact that there's just such an expansion of opportunities, and you've covered so many well here for our audience, Lina. And I just wanted to say thank you for attending. And my global audience, you've been watching Lina Jasutiene, CEO and founder of Recoupex. I'm Steve Ferreira, CEO of Ocean Audit, and Lina, let me thank you from my bottom of my heart for coming on today. You did a great job, and I hope you join us again at FreightWaves.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Steve, for having me.